Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Mangs, and today I'm just making a video really quickly to cover a bit of news that was recently posted in my community, and a lot of people are talking about it. I've gotten multiple requests to cover it, so I figured I would, even though it's going to be a very short video because it's not exactly a lot to talk about, but I think a lot of people would like to hear my opinion on this piece of news anyway. So, a article recently popped up on the webpage Nintendo Enthusiast written by Andrew Rocket, and it references an interview between Greg Miller and Imran Khan, where they're talking about cross-generation games. However, 48 minutes into the interview, they talk about something that I think a lot of people from the Fire Emblem community would love to hear more about. It's just really a sentence, and I'll just play it for you right here.
So I would not be shocked to see those games eventually come to Switch too. Like, I know there was another Fire Emblem remake in the works for 3DS. And that was one of the things that, they shuttered. So maybe that's one of the things they do bring forward in the future.
So yes, as you can hear from this interview, there was another Fire Emblem 3DS game in the makings that apparently got cancelled by Nintendo, and the reasoning behind this was they basically pulled the plug on the 3DS. They felt that it had reached the end of its lifespan. There's not really any point in developing any further games for it, or at the very least, the games that you develop for it will not sell as well. When a console gets outdated, games that are produced for it will sell more poorly. We saw this with Echoes. We can also see this trend in previous games, such as Tracia 776, which was made towards the end of the Super Nintendo's lifespan. It too sold very poorly. It seems like there's sort of a golden age when a console is very popular. I'm pretty sure that the Switch 2 will experience a decline in the years to come, and that games that comes out for it will start to sell more poorly as a newer and more stronger console will hit the market, and everyone will want that instead. So the big question right now, and what's on everyone's mind, is what is this remake, or what was this remake going to be? We know why it got cancelled, but what game were they planning on remaking? And that's sort of what I'm going to speculate in this video, even though I absolutely have no proof of anything. Like, this is just me theorizing, so take everything I say with a grain of salt. But my money is actually on Binding Blade, and the reason why I think they were remaking Binding Blade is because when they interviewed the director of Shadows of Valencia and asked him, what game do you want to remake next, he actually just straight out said, I would love to remake Binding Blade. And so I personally think that that's the game they were working on. The author of the article explains that he would love to see a Tellius remake, and that's what a lot of people are also theorizing, that this may have been either a remake of Path of Radiance or a remake of Radiant Dawn, or maybe a remake of both games bundled together into one. Now, the reason why I don't think this is very feasible is because, one, the Tellius games are still sort of good enough to play today. They kind of hold up pretty well. They're localized, their graphics are fine, they're not great maybe, but they're still enjoyable to play. And also, a remake of the Tellius game seems like a very big undertaking. I think a game like Binding Blade could be remade a lot easier than the Tellius games. The Tellius games just have a much more bigger scope to them, especially if you're going to do both of them in one remake. That sounds like a hell of a long game you're going to do right there. So I personally don't think that's what they were going for. I think that my money would be on Binding Blade. I think that in terms of a remake for Fire Emblem, I think that Binding Blade is just a really simple story. It sounds easy to do. There's not a whole lot you gotta do with it. If you want to remake a game like Genealogy of the Holy War, for example, I can imagine that there's a lot of work that needs to go into that, because it's a big game, it's a huge game, it spans 2 generations, there's going to be a lot of new mechanics that you need to incorporate into it. Whereas with Binding Blade, it's pretty much just a traditional Fire Emblem game, and I think it would be very easy to make. So, I think that this probably was a Binding Blade remake that may now never see the light of day. So, the big question that the Fire Emblem community is having right now is, what is the future for Fire Emblem remakes? When can we expect to see one? Will we see one? And where will it come out? I think, according to this article and this interview, we can pretty much safely conclude that there won't be any remakes coming out for the 3DS. Nintendo pretty much have said they don't want to. They pulled the plug on it. The console's too old. Even if they did release a remake on the 3DS, I don't think it would sell very well. But is it then feasible to conclude that the next Fire Emblem remake will come out on the Switch? I don't see why it wouldn't. The Switch seems to be doing pretty well with games like Octopath Traveler, which has a style that I think would really work for a Fire Emblem remake. And personally, I think that Fire Emblem 4 Shadows of Drugdrawl would be a really good idea. It probably wouldn't sell as well as Three Houses, but I don't think it would need to either. I think they know by now that a remake isn't going to sell as well as a main Fire Emblem title, and I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with that. I don't see why Fire Emblem 17 would have to outsell Fire Emblem 16. To be a success. It just doesn't seem like a logical conclusion. They knew that Echoes wasn't going to sell very well. It sold a lot worse than Fates, but it also apparently sold most of the games that they produced and had in stock. So they estimated this decline in sales, and they went ahead with it anyway. And I think, despite Echoes maybe not blowing the roof off in terms of sale, I think it still showed everyone that a Fire Emblem remake is something that we're interested in. And it gives us a nice opportunity to go back and re-experience the older tales that are very much loved in the community. In my opinion, it is fan service in a way. They know they're not going to do as well, but it's a nice homage to older fans of the series who would love to introduce those stories to newer fans of the series in a more convenient game, rather than, going back and emulating the games and applying translation patches and all that good jazz. So, yeah, no, I definitely hope that we will see a remake for the Switch. I think it would be a good move, and, I hope that the game that they cancelled on the 3DS, that they will simply transfer it over to the Switch instead, or maybe if there's a new console on the way that is, they did announce like a Switch Mini, maybe something like that would be appropriate for a Fire Emblem remake. We'll see. So, that was my thoughts and opinions on this latest news article. Not really a whole lot to talk about, not really a long video, but a lot of you guys request that I cover it anyway, so I hope it was satisfactory. Now I would like to move this over to you guys. What Fire Emblem game do you think that they were working on? And why do you think it got cancelled? Obviously, we know some of the reasons, but do you think there were any other factors at play? Do you think it was a Tellius remake, a Binding Blade remake, a Tracia remake, a Genealogy remake? I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions in the comment section below. And also, if you want to, I'd also like to hear what kind of game would you most want them to remake? And would you like it for the Switch? Or do you hope that they'll wait until some other console comes out and that they remake it on that instead? I'd love to hear your opinions on it, guys. Please, give me a like and a comment and subscribe for more Fire Emblem content, and if there's any additional Fire Emblem news, you can be sure I'll cover it on the channel. Anyway, my name has been Mangs, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.